The crystal wine glass caught the candlelight as Marcus Ashford raised it to his lips, pausing mid-gesture when he noticed the young waitress standing frozen beside his table. Her hand trembled slightly as she held a serving tray, her eyes fixed on something beyond him, or perhaps on nothing at all. The restaurant, Bellevue's most exclusive establishment, hummed with the quiet conversation of wealthy patrons, but in that moment, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. "Is something wrong?" Marcus asked, his deep voice cutting through her trance. The waitress, her name tag read Claire Bennett, blinked rapidly as if waking from a dream. I apologize, sir. I'll be right back with your entree." Before he could respond, she turned and walked swiftly toward the kitchen, her movements stiff and mechanical. Marcus frowned, setting down the wineglass untouched. In his 42 years, he'd built Ashford Industries from a small tech consulting firm into a billion-dollar empire, and he'd learned to read people with uncanny accuracy. Something about Claire's behavior triggered an alarm in his mind, though he couldn't quite identify what. The restaurant's ambience was impeccable as always, soft jazz playing from hidden speakers, the scent of truffle and aged wine, tables spaced far enough apart to ensure privacy for business discussions and romantic dinners alike. Marcus had chosen this venue for his meeting with Richard Caldwell, his business partner of 15 years, to discuss their upcoming merger with a European conglomerate. Richard had excused himself to take a phone call 10 minutes ago, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and that untouched glass of Bordeaux. Claire returned minutes later, her composure regained, but her eyes still holding that peculiar intensity. She approached his table with a fresh bottle of wine and a clean glass. "Sir, I'm terribly sorry," she said, her voice steadier now but edged with urgency. "There was a mix-up in the wine cellar. This is the correct vintage you ordered. The 2015 Chateau Margaux. May I replace your glass?" Marcus studied her face. She was perhaps 27 or 28, with auburn hair pulled back in a neat bun and intelligent green eyes that seemed to plead with him for something he didn't understand. The restaurant's dim lighting cast shadows across her features, making her expression difficult to read. "A mix-up?" he questioned. "The wine I have is perfectly fine." "Please," Claire insisted, and there was something in that single word, a desperate edge that made his instincts flare. "Allow me to pour you the correct bottle. The manager would be mortified if he knew we'd served you the wrong year." Something in her demeanor made Marcus nod slowly. "Very well." With practiced efficiency, Claire removed his full glass and set it aside on her tray. She uncorked the new bottle, poured a fresh serving into a clean glass, and placed it before him. Her hands, he noticed, had stopped trembling. "Thank you for your understanding, Mr. Ashford," she said quietly. And the fact that she knew his name wasn't surprising. He was a regular patron, and his face had graced enough business magazine covers that most people in Seattle's high society recognized him. As she lifted the tray with the original glass, their eyes met for a brief, charged moment. Claire's gaze held a warning, a secret, and something else. Fear, perhaps, or determination. Then she was gone, disappearing into the kitchen's swinging doors. Marcus sat back in his chair, his meal forgotten. The new wine sat before him, untouched. His mind raced through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. Had something been wrong with the first glass? Had Claire seen something he'd missed? Richard returned to the table, his face flushed from whatever conversation he'd been having. "Sorry about that, Marcus. My daughter's having issues at college again." "You know how it is." He slid into his seat and reached for his own wine glass, taking a long drink. "So where were we?" "Ah, yes, the merger terms." But Marcus barely heard him. His attention was divided between his business partner and the kitchen doors, waiting for Claire to reappear. When she finally did, 15 minutes later, she avoided his gaze entirely, serving other tables with mechanical precision. The evening progressed, and Marcus found himself unable to concentrate on Richard's discussion of profit margins and market shares. Something monumental had happened at his table tonight, something he didn't yet understand, but knew in his bones was significant. When Richard excused himself to the restroom, Marcus made his decision. He caught Claire's eye and gestured for her to approach. "Yes, Mr. Ashford," she asked, her voice professionally neutral. "What was in that first glass?" he asked directly, keeping his voice low. Claire's face paled. I don't know what you— Don't insult my intelligence, Marcus interrupted, his tone gentle but firm. You switched my wine for a reason. What did you see? She glanced around nervously, ensuring no other staff members were within earshot. I can't discuss this here, she whispered. But please, Mr. Ashford, whatever you do, don't drink anything you didn't see poured directly from a sealed bottle. And, when she hesitated, be careful who you trust. Before he could press further, she hurried away to attend to another table. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. Be careful who you trust. The words echoed in his mind as Richard returned, settling back into his seat with a satisfied smile. Everything all right? Richard asked, noticing Marcus's distracted expression. Fine, Marcus replied automatically, but his mind was elsewhere. He looked at his business partner, his friend of 15 years, the man who'd stood beside him through the company's darkest days and brightest triumphs, the man who'd toasted with him just an hour ago, whose own wine glass sat empty now after he'd drained it completely. The merger papers lay on the table between them, awaiting Marcus's signature, papers that would transfer 49% of Ashford Industries holdings into a joint venture with Richard's connections overseas. Papers Marcus had been ready to sign without hesitation, trusting his partner's judgment implicitly. Now doubt crept in like fog through a cracked window. Richard, Marcus said slowly, tell me again about the European investors. Who exactly are they? Richard's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second, so brief that Marcus might have missed it if he hadn't been watching carefully. We've been over this, Marcus. The Steinberg Group. Solid reputation, excellent track record, and you vetted them personally? Of course. Richard's tone carried a hint of offense. Marcus, we've been planning this for months. What's with the sudden cold feet? Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he watched as Claire passed their table again, her eyes deliberately not meeting his. But in that avoidance, he saw confirmation of his growing suspicions. Something was very wrong, and the young waitress who'd switched his wineglass in silence had somehow saved him from walking blindly into danger. The question was, what kind of danger, and how deeply did it run? The following morning, Marcus arrived at his office on the 42nd floor of the Ashford Tower, with a throbbing headache and a mind full of questions that had kept him awake most of the night. He'd left the restaurant without signing the merger papers, citing a need to review some final details, a decision that had clearly irritated Richard, though his partner had masked it with understanding smiles. Now, sitting behind his mahogany desk overlooking Seattle's skyline, Marcus couldn't shake the memory of Claire's terrified eyes and trembling hands. He'd built his empire on instinct as much as strategy, and every fiber of his being screamed that the young waitress had intercepted something catastrophic. His assistant, Jennifer, buzzed through on the intercom. Mr. Ashford, your 10 o'clock is here. Also, there's someone in the lobby asking to see you, a Claire Bennett. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's urgent. Marcus sat forward sharply. Send her up immediately. Cancel my 10 o'clock. But sir, it's the— Cancel it, Jennifer. 10 minutes later, Claire stood in his office looking entirely different from the composed waitress of the previous evening. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she'd slept as poorly as he had. Thank you for seeing me, she began, her voice tight with nerves. I know this is inappropriate, showing up at your workplace, but I couldn't— I had to warn you properly. Marcus gestured to the leather chair across from his desk. Sit. Tell me everything. Claire perched on the edge of the seat, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Last night, I saw someone put something in your wine glass. I was bringing water to the table next to yours when I noticed a man. He was standing near your table, while you were both looking at the menu. He pulled a small vial from his pocket and emptied it into your glass. It happened so fast, maybe 3 seconds. Then he walked away toward the bar. Marcus felt his blood run cold. Describe him. Tall, maybe 6 feet, dark hair, wearing a grey suit. I didn't see his face clearly. The lighting in that section is dim. But I saw what he did, Mr. Ashford. I saw it clearly. And you didn't call the police? Alert the manager? Claire's expression turned anguished. I panicked. I'm an immigrant, Mr. Ashford. I came here from Ireland 3 years ago on a work visa. My status is complicated. The restaurant where I work, they pay me under the table because my visa expired 6 months ago. If police got involved, if there was an investigation, I'd be deported. My mother back home is sick. She depends on the money I send. I couldn't risk it." She leaned forward, her eyes pleading. "But I couldn't let you drink it either. So I did the only thing I could think of. I switched your glass, claimed it was the wrong wine. I took the original glass to the kitchen and poured it down the sink. I know I should have done more, but I was terrified." Marcus studied her for a long moment. Everything about her demeanor suggested she was telling the truth. The nervous energy, the guilt in her eyes, the way her accent thickened with emotion. But he'd been fooled before by people he'd trusted far more than a stranger. "Why come to me now?" he asked. "Because I couldn't sleep," Claire admitted. "Because what if that person tries again? What if next time I'm not there to help? I kept thinking about it all night and I realized someone wants to hurt you, Mr. Ashford, badly enough to poison you in a public restaurant. You need to know that. You need to protect yourself." Marcus stood and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, his mind churning. "This man you saw, could he have been wearing a Rolex, silver, with a blue face?" He heard Claire's sharp intake of breath. "Yes. I noticed it because the watch caught the light when he reached for your glass. How did you—" "My business partner wears that exact watch," Marcus said quietly, still facing the window. "I gave it to him 5 years ago, as a thank you for his loyalty." The silence in the office was deafening. When Marcus turned back, Claire's face had gone pale. "Mr. Ashford, I don't want to cause trouble between you and your colleagues. Maybe I was wrong about the watch. The lighting was dim and—" "You weren't wrong," Marcus interrupted. "Every instinct I have tells me you weren't wrong." He returned to his desk and pulled up his computer, typing rapidly. "Richard Caldwell, my partner for 15 years, the man I trusted to build this company alongside me, the man currently pushing for a merger that would give him control of half my holdings." He looked up at Claire. "Tell me, what happens if I die before signing those merger papers?" Claire shook her head, confused. "I don't understand business things, Mr. Ashford. My will," Marcus explained, his voice bitter, "stipulates that in the event of my death, Richard assumes full control of Ashford Industries as interim CEO. The board would likely make that permanent within months. But if the merger goes through first, his European partners get their 49% stake, and Richard gets his portion of that deal, roughly $200 million in the initial transfer alone." He leaned back in his chair. "But if I die before signing, Richard gets everything. The entire company, worth approximately $4 billion. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God." "The question is," Marcus continued, "does Richard get more from the merger or from my death? And has he decided the answer is death?" For several minutes they sat in silence, the weight of the implications settling over them. Finally Claire spoke, her voice small. "What are you going to do?" Marcus pulled out his phone. "First, I'm going to hire you properly. You need a work visa, your mother needs medical care, and I need someone I can trust. Consider yourself employed as my personal consultant, effective immediately. My lawyers will handle your immigration status." "Mr. Ashford, I can't possibly—" "You saved my life," he said simply. "Let me help yours in return." Tears welled in Claire's eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes, and then help me figure out if my best friend is trying to kill me." Over the next 2 hours, Marcus and Claire pieced together a disturbing picture. Marcus pulled up financial records, emails, and meeting notes from the past 6 months. Patterns emerged that he'd been too trusting to see before. Richard had been pushing the merger with unusual aggression, dismissing Marcus's occasional hesitations with elaborate reassurances. The European partners, the Steinberg Group, had been Richard's discovery, his contacts, his deal. Marcus had met them only via video conference, always with Richard present, always with Richard controlling the narrative. "Look at this," Marcus said, pointing to an email chain. 3 weeks ago, Richard increased my life insurance policy as part of a routine corporate review. The company is the beneficiary, which means whoever controls the company controls that payout. $50 million. Claire leaned over his shoulder, reading. "And this email here, he's asking about your medical history. Says it's for the insurance update, but he's asking very specific questions about allergies and medications," Marcus finished grimly. "Questions that would help someone know exactly what substance might kill me without raising immediate suspicion." The office phone rang, making them both jump. Jennifer's voice came through. "Mr. Ashford, Mr. Caldwell is here. He says it's urgent regarding the merger papers. Should I send him in?" Marcus and Claire locked eyes. In that moment, a decision hung in the balance. Confront Richard now with incomplete evidence or play along until they knew more. "Tell him I'm in a meeting," Marcus said. "I'll call him later." After Jennifer disconnected, Claire stood and walked to the window, hugging herself. This is insane. Things like this don't really happen, do they? Business partners don't actually murder each other for $4 billion, Marcus said darkly. People have killed for far less. His phone buzzed with a text message from Richard. "We need to talk today. The Steinberg Group is getting impatient. Don't throw away 15 years of partnership over cold feet." Marcus showed the message to Claire. "He's pressuring me." That's not like him. Richard's usually patient, strategic. This desperation is new. "What if he knows I saw something?" Claire asked suddenly, her voice rising with panic. "What if he recognized me from the restaurant? Mr. Ashford, what if I'm in danger too?" It was a chilling thought, and one Marcus realized he should have considered sooner. If Richard had been the man who poisoned the wine, and if he'd noticed Claire's intervention, she'd become a liability to whatever plan he'd set in motion. "You're staying close to me," Marcus decided. "I'll have security assigned to you, and we're going to find proof, real concrete proof of what Richard's planning. Then we're going to stop him." Claire nodded, though fear still shadowed her features. "How?" Marcus smiled grimly. "By giving him exactly what he wants. I'm going to tell Richard I'm ready to sign the merger papers. Tomorrow night, private dinner, just the two of us to celebrate our partnership, and this time we'll be watching for what he does next." "That's incredibly dangerous," Claire protested. "Yes," Marcus agreed, "but it's the only way to catch him in the act. The only way to get the evidence we need." He looked at her intently. "Are you with me?" Claire took a deep breath, and Marcus saw her fear transform into something else. Determination, courage, the same quality that had made her risk everything to switch a wine glass for a stranger. "I'm with you," she said firmly. "Let's catch this bastard." The next evening arrived with heavy clouds threatening rain over Seattle. Marcus had spent the day making careful preparations, each move calculated to appear natural while setting the trap for Richard. He'd called his partner that morning, voice warm and apologetic, explaining that he'd been under stress and was ready to move forward with the merger. Richard had sounded relieved, even jubilant, suggesting they celebrate with dinner at Bellevue, the same restaurant where everything had begun. Marcus had agreed, fighting the bile rising in his throat at his friend's enthusiasm. Or former friend. He still struggled to reconcile the Richard he'd known for 15 years with the man who might have tried to poison him. Now, standing in his penthouse apartment, Marcus adjusted his tie while Claire paced nervously in his living room. She wore a simple black dress. He'd insisted she accompany him, positioned at a nearby table as his date, who'd arrived separately. His head of security, Thomas Wright, a former police detective, had also been briefed and would be stationed at the bar with clear sightlines to Marcus's table. "The recording device is in your watch," Thomas reminded him, pointing to the elegant timepiece on Marcus's wrist. "It'll capture audio within 15 feet. I'll have eyes on you the entire time, and Claire will be 3 tables away. If anything seems wrong, anything at all, we abort." Marcus nodded, though his jaw was tight with tension. "And you're certain the restaurant manager cooperated?" "Fully," Thomas confirmed. "He's horrified that something might have happened in his establishment. He's provided us with the security footage from 2 nights ago. We've been reviewing it all day." Claire stopped pacing. "Did you find the man I described?" Thomas's expression darkened. "We found someone matching that description. The footage shows him approaching your table at exactly 8:47 p.m., while you and Mr. Caldwell were both looking down at menus. His back is to the camera, but his build and clothing match what you described. He reaches toward the table. We can't see exactly what he does from that angle, then walks toward the bar and exits through the side entrance 3 minutes later." "Can you identify him?" Marcus asked. "Not from the footage. His face is never clearly visible. But here's what's interesting. He arrived at the restaurant at 8:30 p.m., 17 minutes before you and Mr. Caldwell were seated. He waited at the bar, nursing a single drink, watching the entrance. When you arrived, he waited exactly 10 minutes after you were seated, then made his approach." Marcus felt his stomach clench. "He was waiting for us. This was planned." "It appears so," Thomas agreed, "and there's more. I ran some background on the Steinberg Group, the European partners in your merger. The company exists, but it's a shell corporation registered in Luxembourg." The actual owners are hidden behind layers of offshore entities. I've got people digging deeper, but my instinct says this whole merger is fraudulent, Claire gasped. So Richard wasn't just trying to kill you, he was trying to steal from you too. Potentially both, Thomas said. Get Marcus to sign over 49% of his holdings to a fake company, then eliminate him so Richard inherits the remaining 51%. The partners in the shell company were probably going to disappear with their share, leaving Richard with everything else. Marcus walked to his window, looking out over the city lights. 15 years. 15 years of trust, of building something together, of considering Richard more than a partner, a brother. The betrayal cut deeper than any business loss could. Why? He asked quietly, though he knew no one in the room could answer. We were both making millions. The company was thriving. Why wasn't it enough? Greed, Thomas said simply. It's never enough for some people. 4 billion is better than 400 million. Claire approached Marcus, her voice gentle. Are you sure you want to go through with this? We have enough to be suspicious, enough to protect yourself. You could confront him privately, dissolve the partnership. Without proof, he walks away, Marcus interrupted. Maybe he tries again in 6 months, a year. Maybe he targets someone else. No, I need to see this through. I need to know for certain, and I need evidence that will stand up in court. An hour later, Marcus sat across from Richard Caldwell at the same table where Claire had saved his life 2 nights earlier. Richard looked relaxed, confident, his smile genuine as he raised a glass of champagne. To partnership, Richard toasted, to 15 years of success and many more to come. Marcus clinked his glass against Richard's, but didn't drink. I'm pacing myself tonight. Want to keep a clear head for reviewing the final papers. Of course, Richard said smoothly. He'd brought a leather briefcase, which now sat on the empty chair beside him. I have everything prepared. Once you sign, we'll file with the regulatory authorities tomorrow morning. The Steinberg Group is thrilled. They've already wired the first installment to our escrow account. Have they? Marcus kept his voice neutral, though his heart raced. That's quite trusting of them, sending money before the deal is finalized. It's how business is done in Europe, Richard explained. Shows good faith. Marcus, I know you've had doubts, but I promise you, this merger is the best thing for Ashford Industries. We'll expand into markets we could never access alone. Your vision, your company, will become truly global. From 3 tables away, Marcus could see Claire watching, her face pale but composed. At the bar, Thomas appeared to be engrossed in his phone, but Marcus knew he was recording everything. The waitress, not Claire this time, but a young woman named Amy, brought their appetizers. Marcus watched Richard's hands carefully, but his partner made no move toward Marcus's wine glass or water. Everything seemed normal, almost disappointingly so. They talked business through the first course, Richard painting an enthusiastic picture of their future. Marcus played along, asking questions, appearing convinced, but he watched, always watched, waiting for the moment when Richard would reveal himself. It came during the main course. Richard excused himself to the restroom, leaving his briefcase behind. Marcus's instinct screamed at him to look inside, but Thomas had warned him against doing anything that might seem suspicious on the security cameras they knew were recording. When Richard returned, he seemed slightly agitated. I just got a call from Klaus Steinberg. He wants confirmation that we're signing tonight. He's quite insistent. Is he? Marcus set down his fork. That seems unusual. Why the rush? Market timing, Richard said quickly. There's a window for some acquisitions they want to make using our combined resources. Marcus, I need you to trust me on this. I've vetted everything. This is legitimate. Marcus leaned back in his chair. Richard, we've known each other a long time. Been through a lot together. You'd tell me if something was wrong, wouldn't you? If there was something I should know about this deal. For just a moment, something flickered across Richard's face. Guilt, fear. But it vanished so quickly Marcus might have imagined it. Of course I would. Marcus, you're my best friend. I'd never do anything to hurt you or the company. Never, Marcus pressed, his voice soft but intense. Richard met his eyes steadily. Never. The lie hung between them, heavy and toxic. Marcus felt something break inside him, the last thread of hope that maybe somehow this was all a misunderstanding. I need some air, Marcus said abruptly, standing. Give me 10 minutes. This is a big decision. He walked toward the restaurant's outdoor patio, pulling out his phone as if to make a call. Thomas followed at a discreet distance. Once outside, away from other patrons, Marcus turned to his security chief. "He's lying," Marcus said flatly. "Everything about his body language, his tone. He's lying about the Steinberg group, about the deal, all of it." "I know," Thomas agreed, "but we still don't have proof he tried to poison you. The man from the security footage could theoretically be someone else, hired by someone else. We need Richard to make a move tonight." Marcus thought quickly. "What if I tell him I'm not signing? That I want more time to review the Steinberg group's credentials? He might panic, might force his hand, or he might just postpone and try another approach," Marcus countered. He looked through the glass doors at Richard, who sat checking his phone with barely concealed anxiety. "No, I think I need to sign. I think that's what triggers whatever he has planned next." Thomas grabbed his arm. "Marcus, that's too dangerous. If he's planning another attempt on your life, then you'll be watching, Claire will be watching, and this time we'll catch him." Marcus pulled free. "Trust me, Thomas. This is the only way." Back at the table, Marcus projected an air of decision and confidence. "All right, Richard, let's do this. Show me where to sign." Richard's face lit up with what appeared to be genuine joy. "Marcus, you won't regret this. I promise you." He pulled the papers from his briefcase, spreading them across the table. "Just here and initial here." As Marcus bent over the documents, pen in hand, he saw Richard's reflection in the polished surface of a nearby wine glass. His partner's expression had changed completely, no longer warm and friendly, but cold, calculating, triumphant. Marcus's hand trembled slightly as he signed his name, legally transferring 49% of his life's work to a shell corporation controlled by criminals, with his potential murderer as an accomplice. "Excellent!" Richard gathered the papers with barely controlled excitement. "I'll file these first thing tomorrow. Let's celebrate properly. Champagne for the table." He signaled their waitress, ordering a bottle of Dom Perignon. When it arrived, Richard insisted on pouring both glasses himself, making a show of it. Marcus watched his hands carefully, but saw nothing suspicious. They toasted, and this time Marcus took a small sip, trusting that Richard wouldn't make his move so obviously. The champagne was perfect, untainted. "To the future," Richard said, his eyes gleaming. "To the truth," Marcus replied quietly, a response Richard seemed to find amusing rather than concerning. As they finished their meal, Richard grew increasingly relaxed, even jovial. He told stories about their early days in business, laughed about challenges they'd overcome together. To anyone watching, they appeared to be old friends celebrating success. But Marcus saw what others didn't, the occasional glances Richard made toward the exit, the way he checked his watch repeatedly, the tight grip he maintained on his phone. Richard was waiting for something. At 10:15 p.m., Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his entire demeanor shifted. "Marcus, I hate to cut this short, but I have an early meeting tomorrow. Why don't we call it a night?" "Of course," Marcus agreed, signaling for the check. They walked to the valet together, waiting for their cars in the cool evening air. Richard seemed distracted, almost nervous now. When his Mercedes arrived first, he clasped Marcus's hand warmly. "Thank you for trusting me, Marcus. You've made the right decision." As Richard drove away, Thomas appeared at Marcus's elbow. "He's spooked about something. That last phone call, I'm having it traced, but my gut says it was from whoever he's working with." Claire joined them, her face flushed with anxiety. "What happens now?" Marcus watched Richard's taillights disappear into Seattle traffic. "Now we wait. If Richard thinks everything went according to plan, he'll make his next move soon. And when he does, we'll be ready." What none of them could see was that across the street, in a dark sedan, someone was watching them with equal intensity, and in their hand was a phone showing a text message from Richard. He signed, "Move to Phase 2." 3 days passed in tense anticipation. Marcus went through the motions of business as usual, but every moment felt like walking on a knife's edge. Thomas had assigned a full security detail, discreet but thorough, and Claire had moved into the guest suite of his penthouse at his insistence, both for her safety and because he trusted her completely now. On the 4th morning, everything unraveled. Marcus was reviewing quarterly reports when Jennifer rushed into his office without knocking, her face ashen. "Mr. Ashford, turn on the news. Channel 7. He grabbed the remote, and his blood turned to ice. The headline read, Ashford Industries CEO under investigation for fraud. The reporter's voice filled the office. Sources close to the investigation claim Marcus Ashford has been funneling company funds through offshore accounts, potentially defrauding investors of hundreds of millions of dollars. Federal authorities are expected to file charges within days. It's a lie, Jennifer breathed. Sir, you would never... Of course it's a lie, Marcus said, his mind racing. But the question is, who's behind it? His phone rang. Richard's name appeared on the screen. Marcus, have you seen the news? Richard's voice dripped with concern. This is insane. I've already called our lawyers. We'll fight this together. Will we? Marcus asked coldly. A pause. What's that supposed to mean? Where are you right now, Richard? At my office. Why? Stay there. I'm coming over. We need to talk, privately. Marcus ended the call and looked at Thomas, who'd arrived during the news broadcast. It's happening. He's framing me. The Shell Corporation, the offshore accounts. He's making it look like I'm the criminal, which means he doesn't need to kill you anymore, Thomas realized. He can destroy your reputation, force you out of the company, maybe even get you imprisoned. The board would have to remove you as CEO, and who would they turn to? Richard, Claire said quietly from the doorway. She'd been listening, her face pale but determined. They'd turn to Richard, and once he's CEO, he can make the fraud investigation disappear, because he's the one who created the false evidence in the first place. Marcus slammed his fist on the desk. It's brilliant, actually. If I'm in prison, I can't fight him. He gets control of the company, and I can't do anything about it. It's cleaner than murder, legally speaking. So, what do we do? Claire asked. Thomas pulled out his phone. We use what we've gathered. The security footage, the recording from the restaurant, the background on the Steinberg group. I've also been tracking Richard's communications. His phone pinged from 3 different burner cell towers in the past week. He's talking to someone he doesn't want traced. It won't be enough, Marcus said grimly. Not without connecting him directly to the poisoning attempt or the fraud. Everything we have is circumstantial. His phone rang again. This time an unknown number. Marcus answered, putting it on speaker. Mr. Ashford, my name is Detective Linda Morrison, Seattle PD Financial Crimes Division. I need you to come to the station for questioning regarding allegations of... I'm aware of the allegations, Detective, and they're false, but I'll cooperate fully. Give me 2 hours. After he hung up, the 3 of them stood in heavy silence. Finally, Claire spoke. What if we make Richard think his plan worked? What if you go to the police station, act cooperative, make him believe you're trapped? He'd let his guard down, Thomas said slowly, catching on. If he thinks he's won, he might get careless, might contact his accomplices, celebrate his victory. Marcus nodded. And while he's doing that, we gather the final pieces of evidence we need. He looked at Thomas. You said Richard's been using burner phones. Can you trace his communications if he thinks he's safe? If he gets sloppy, yes, especially if he's celebrating. Then let's give him a reason to celebrate. 2 hours later, Marcus sat in an interrogation room at the Seattle Police Department, facing Detective Morrison and her partner. He'd brought his lawyer, Patricia Chen, who'd worked for Ashford Industries for 8 years, and trusted Marcus implicitly. Mr. Ashford, Detective Morrison began, we have evidence of wire transfers from Ashford Industries accounts to offshore holdings in the Cayman Islands, transfers that appear to have been authorized by you. Can you explain these? I can explain them very simply, Detective. They're forgeries. I never authorized any such transfers. Your digital signature is on the authorization forms. Then someone forged my digital signature. Detective, I'm the victim here, not the perpetrator. For 3 hours they questioned him. Marcus answered every question honestly, provided access to his financial records, volunteered information. He could see Detective Morrison's skepticism gradually shifting as she realized the evidence against him didn't quite add up. Who do you think is framing you, Mr. Ashford? She finally asked. Marcus met her eyes steadily. My business partner, Richard Caldwell. And I can prove it, but I need time. Meanwhile, across the city, Thomas and Claire had broken into Richard's private office. It was technically illegal, but Marcus had given Thomas a key. He was still part owner of the company after all, and Richard's office was company property. Look for anything, Thomas instructed, methodically searching through file cabinets. Communications with the Steinberg Group, financial records, anything that connects him to the fraud or the poisoning. Claire sat at Richard's computer, using a password Marcus had provided. Richard had never changed it from their early days when they'd shared everything. She navigated through files, her heart pounding. "Thomas," she called out, her voice shaking. "Look at this." On the screen was an email draft never sent, dated the day after the restaurant incident. It read, "Subject, problem with W. Phase 1 failed. Subject became suspicious. Implementing Phase 2, financial destruction. Ensure all evidence points to MA. Timeline 1 week maximum. Due must be whoever he hired to poison Marcus," Thomas said, photographing the screen. "And MA. Marcus Ashford. This is it, Claire. This is proof." They kept searching, finding more damning evidence. Communications with the Steinberg Group's real controllers, detailed plans for the fraud scheme, even a ledger showing payments to someone listed only as W for project elimination. But the most damning evidence was in a locked drawer in Richard's desk. Thomas jimmied it open and found a small glass vial, nearly empty, with a pharmacy label that had been partially peeled off. Beside it, a handwritten note in Richard's writing, "Remaining supply backup plan if needed." "He kept it," Claire whispered, horrified. "He kept the poison." Thomas carefully bagged the evidence. Arrogance. He never thought he'd be caught. At that moment, they heard voices in the hallway outside Richard's office. Thomas grabbed Claire's arm, pulling her behind the door just as it opened. Richard walked in with another man, the man from the restaurant security footage. Claire recognized him instantly and had to clamp her hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. "The news coverage is perfect," Richard was saying, settling into his desk chair. "Marcus is at the police station right now, probably being arrested as we speak. The board is meeting tomorrow to discuss his removal. By next week I'll be CEO and you'll get your final payment." "And the Irish waitress?" the other man asked, his voice cold. "She saw me at the restaurant. She could identify me." "Claire Bennett? I've had someone watching her. She's been staying at Marcus's penthouse, probably his latest conquest. When they arrest him, she'll scatter like all the others. She's nobody." Hidden behind the door, Claire felt rage burn through her fear. Nobody, after everything she'd risked. "Still," the man continued, "loose ends make me nervous." "Then tie it up if it makes you feel better," Richard said dismissively. "Just make it look accidental. I don't need more complications." Thomas's hand tightened on Claire's arm, holding her in place even as she tensed to confront them. They waited, barely breathing, until the two men finally left the office, their voices fading down the hallway. "We have them," Thomas said quietly, showing Claire the recording device he'd been running the entire time. "We have everything." An hour later, Marcus sat in his attorney's car outside the police station when his phone rang. Thomas's voice was triumphant. "We've got him, Marcus, everything. Emails, the poison, a recorded confession. He's done. Where is he now?" "Left the office 10 minutes ago. His phone shows he's heading to Bellevue, probably going to the restaurant to celebrate." Marcus smiled grimly. "Then let's not keep him waiting. Call Detective Morrison. Tell her to meet us there. It's time to end this." At the restaurant, Richard sat at the bar, ordering expensive scotch and checking his phone with satisfaction. The news was still running stories about Marcus's alleged fraud. Perfect. He didn't notice Marcus entering until his former partner slid onto the bar stool beside him. "Hello, Richard." Richard's face went white, then red, then settled into forced casualness. "Marcus, I thought you'd still be at the police station. Are you all right? I've been so worried." "Drop the act," Marcus said quietly. "I know everything. The poisoning, the fake merger, the fraud scheme. I know about W and the Steinberg Group and your plan to frame me." For a long moment, Richard said nothing. Then, surprisingly, he laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. "How long have you known?" "Since the night Claire switched my wine glass. She saved my life, Richard, the life you tried to take." Richard took a long drink of his scotch. "You were always too trusting, Marcus, too content with your billions while I did the real work. I built those European connections. I negotiated the deals. But it was always Ashford Industries, always your name, your glory. So you decided to take it all." "I decided to claim what I'd earned," Richard corrected. "And I would have succeeded if not for one meddling waitress who happened to be looking in the right direction at the right moment." "Is that what you're telling yourself?" Claire's voice came from behind them. She stood with Thomas and Detective Morrison, flanked by two uniformed officers. "That you deserve to murder your friend, steal his company, destroy his life." Richard's face twisted with rage. You ruined everything. No, Marcus said, standing. You ruined everything the moment you chose greed over friendship, over decency, over 15 years of partnership. Detective Morrison stepped forward. Richard Caldwell, you're under arrest for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. As the officers handcuffed Richard, he looked at Marcus one last time. It should have been mine, he said quietly. All of it. It could have been ours, Marcus replied. That was never enough for you. They led Richard away, and Marcus felt the tension of the past week finally drain from his body. Claire stood beside him, and he took her hand. Thank you, he said simply. For everything. She smiled, tears in her eyes. I'm just glad I was looking in the right direction. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the balcony of his penthouse watching the sunset paint Seattle's skyline in shades of gold and crimson. Behind him, he heard Claire's laughter as she talked on the phone with her mother in Ireland, her very healthy mother, whose medical bills Marcus had paid in full. The trial had been swift once all the evidence came to light. Richard was serving 20 years for attempted murder and fraud. The man he'd hired, a former chemist with gambling debts named William Torres, had turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. Ashford Industries had survived the scandal, emerging stronger as Marcus implemented new oversight and brought in fresh leadership. He'd stepped back slightly from day-to-day operations, finding he valued life more than work these days. Claire had surprised everyone by showing a remarkable aptitude for business. She'd started as his assistant, but Marcus had quickly recognized her intelligence and instincts. Now she was training in the company's strategic planning division, with a full scholarship to business school that she attended in the evenings. But more than that, something unexpected had grown between them during those intense weeks of danger and revelation, a connection that went beyond gratitude or proximity, something real. Claire joined him on the balcony, handing him a glass of wine, properly poured from a sealed bottle, as he always insisted now. Your mother sends her love, she said. She wants to know when we're visiting Ireland. Whenever you want, Marcus replied, sliding an arm around her waist. I owe her a thank you for raising such a remarkable daughter. Claire leaned into him, comfortable and content. You know, sometimes I think about that night, how one small decision, to pay attention, to act, to be brave, changed everything. You saved more than my life, Marcus said softly. You reminded me what matters, what's real. And what's that? He turned to face her, cupping her cheek with his hand. Trust, truth, people willing to do the right thing even when it costs them something. Claire smiled. Are you getting philosophical in your old age, Mr. Ashford? Maybe, he admitted. Or maybe I'm just grateful for you, for second chances, for learning that the most valuable things in life can't be bought or stolen. They have to be earned. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Marcus kissed her, tasting possibility and promise. Behind them, the city lights began to glow, each one a story, a life, a choice that rippled outward in ways no one could predict. A young waitress had switched a wineglass in silence, and in doing so, she'd changed 2 lives forever. She'd saved a man from death and found herself saved in return, not just from deportation or poverty, but from a life of fear and hiding. Now standing in the home they'd begun to build together, Marcus and Claire looked toward a future neither had imagined 6 months ago. A future built not on billions or empires, but on something far more precious, courage, integrity, and love that had grown from the ashes of betrayal. To new beginnings, Marcus said, raising his wineglass. To paying attention, Claire countered with a smile, clinking her glass against his. And as they drank, the city below them pulsed with life, full of people making choices, taking chances, changing destinies with small acts of bravery that would echo through the years to come.